The fluorescent lights buzz overhead as I watch my parents shift uncomfortably in the chairs opposite me. My father, Vincent Harlow, once commanded respect in every room he entered. Now his shoulders slump forward, his expensive suit hanging loose on a frame that's lost weight from stress. My mother, Patricia, keeps touching her pearl necklace, a nervous habit I remember from childhood arguments. But those arguments were different. Back then, they had all the power. "I'm afraid I don't have any openings at your level," I say, keeping my voice professional and detached. My father's jaw clenches. I see the flash of his old arrogance, quickly smothered by reality. "We'd take anything," my mother whispers. "We just need something stable." The words hang in the air between us. I let the silence stretch, watching them squirm. This moment has been years in the making. Every sleepless night building my consulting firm, every humiliation at family dinners, every time they chose my siblings over me. It all led here, to this beautiful, terrible moment of reversal. My mind drifts back to that dinner 7 years ago. I was 25, fresh with a job offer from a boutique consulting firm in Seattle. I'd rushed home to Denver to share the news, certain they'd finally be proud. The dining room table was set with my mother's good china. My older brother Kenneth and younger sister Diane were already seated, along with my parents. "I have incredible news," I'd announced, unable to contain my excitement. "Morrison and Associates offered me a position. It's exactly what I've been working toward." My father didn't even look up from his steak. "Consulting? That's not a real career, Nora. When are you going to stop wasting time and join the family business?" "I don't want to work for Harlow Industries," I'd said quietly. "I want to build something of my own." Kenneth snorted. "You've always been difficult. Why can't you just be normal like the rest of us?" That night, I cried in my childhood bedroom for the last time. By morning, I'd made a decision. I would show them exactly what I was capable of. The early years were brutal. I took the Seattle job and threw myself into work with obsessive focus. 80-hour weeks became normal. I learned everything I could about business strategy, mergers and acquisitions, corporate restructuring. My colleagues thought I was ambitious. They didn't know I was building weapons. My parents barely called. When they did, it was to remind me that Kenneth had been promoted to VP of Operations at Harlow Industries, or that Diane had successfully launched a new product line. Never questions about my life. Never interest in my achievements. "How's Kenneth doing?" my mother would ask during our quarterly phone calls. I'd hear the warmth in her voice, the pride. When she asked about me, it was an afterthought. "And you? Still doing that consulting thing?" That consulting thing earned me 6 figures by year 2. By year 3, I'd been headhunted by 3 major firms. But I stayed with Morrison and Associates because they let me choose my clients. And I was very particular about which industries I studied, particularly manufacturing and distribution, particularly companies like Harlow Industries. I started noticing the cracks in my family's business around year 4 of my career. During a rare holiday visit, I overheard my father arguing with his CFO on the phone. "I don't care what the margins look like. We're not changing suppliers. We've used them for 20 years. That's when I realized my parents' company was running on legacy and stubbornness, not strategy. Harlow Industries manufactured industrial equipment parts, a business my grandfather had started in the 1960s. They'd grown comfortable, fat on old contracts and relationships. But the industry was changing. Automation, overseas competition, supply chain innovations. My parents weren't adapting. At Christmas dinner, I made the mistake of offering advice. "Dad, have you considered diversifying your supplier base? I've been reading about some issues in the steel industry that might affect your costs." He'd set down his wine glass with a sharp click. "Nora, I've been running this company since before you were born. I think I know what I'm doing." Kenneth smirked across the table. Diane studied her plate. My mother changed the subject to Kenneth's upcoming wedding. That night, I started a private file on my laptop. I titled it Harlow Project. My breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A mid-sized tech company called Vertex Solutions hired me to streamline their operations. The CEO, Marcus Chun, was brilliant and ruthless in the best way. He saw potential where others saw problems. "You're good at this," he told me during our third meeting. Better than good. You see patterns most consultants miss. He offered me a partnership stake if I'd stay on as his permanent strategist. I agreed on one condition. I wanted equity and the freedom to pursue outside investments. Marcus didn't hesitate. Done. That partnership made me my first million by age 29. Not from salary, but from the equity stake when Vertex went public 2 years later. Suddenly, I had capital, real money to play with. My family had no idea. When my mother called to invite me to Kenneth's baby shower, she asked if I could afford the flight home. Times are tough for everyone, she'd said, somehow making my imagined poverty about her concern. I bought a first-class ticket and said nothing. The first signs of Harlow Industries' trouble appeared in trade publications. I'd set up alerts for any news about the company, and my inbox pinged late one Tuesday night. Regional manufacturer faces supplier lawsuit. The article was brief, but damning. One of my father's longtime suppliers was suing for unpaid invoices totaling $3.2 million. I called Kenneth. We were close, but we were still siblings. Hey, I saw the news about the supplier issue. Is everything okay? He sighed, and I heard the exhaustion in his voice. It's nothing. Just a cash flow hiccup. Dad's handling it. If you need any advice, I've dealt with similar situations with clients. We don't need your help, Nora. Some of us actually understand how to run a real business. The call ended shortly after. I sat in my Seattle apartment looking out at the city lights and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not hurt. I was past hurt. This was clarity. They would never see me as capable. No matter what I achieved, I'd always be the black sheep. Fine. If that's who they needed me to be, I'd be the black sheep who ate the whole flock. I spent the next year becoming an expert on my parents' industry. Every spare moment went into research. I studied their competitors, their suppliers, their clients. I analyzed market trends, technological disruptions, regulatory changes. I built financial models projecting where the industry would be in 5, 10, 15 years. The picture wasn't pretty for companies like Harlow Industries, especially ones being run by stubborn men who refused to evolve. My own consulting practice was thriving. Marcus introduced me to his network of investors and entrepreneurs. I started taking on strategic advisory roles for multiple companies, building a portfolio of equity stakes and consulting fees. By age 31, my net worth hit $8 million. My parents still thought I was struggling. At Diane's engagement party, my mother pulled me aside. Honey, your father and I were talking. If you're having trouble making ends meet in Seattle, you could always come home. I'm sure we could find something for you at the company. I smiled and thanked her. Then I wrote a check for $10,000 as an engagement gift. Diane later told me it was unnecessarily extravagant and made her feel uncomfortable. I told her she could return it if it bothered her that much. She kept it. The real crisis hit on a Wednesday morning. I was in a meeting when my phone buzzed with a news alert. Harlow Industries faces federal investigation over safety violations. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just bad. This was catastrophic. The article detailed allegations of knowingly shipping defective parts that had failed in industrial equipment, causing injuries to workers. OSHA was involved. The DOJ was involved. Lawyers were circling like sharks. I excused myself from the meeting and called my father directly. He actually answered. Nora. His voice was heavy, older than I remembered. Dad, I just saw the news. What's going on? It's a misunderstanding. A few bad batches from a supplier. We're handling it. This isn't something you handle quietly. You need crisis management, legal counsel, PR consultants. I said we're handling it. The shout startled me. My father never lost his composure. Look, if you're calling to gloat about how right you were about suppliers, save it. I don't need your advice. He hung up. I stared at my phone, processing. Then I called Marcus. Remember how you said you were looking for distressed asset opportunities? I might have something. The investigation devastated Harlow Industries. Within 3 months, their stock price had plummeted. Major clients canceled contracts. Banks froze credit lines pending the investigation's outcome. My parents had to lay off a third of their workforce. Kenneth quit to take a job with a competitor, unwilling to go down with the ship. Only Diane stayed, more out of guilt than loyalty. I watched it all unfold from Seattle, tracking every development. Marcus and I assembled a team of forensic accountants, lawyers, and industry experts. We built a complete profile of Harlow Industries' financial situation. The company was salvageable, but it would take a complete overhaul. New management, new suppliers, new safety protocols, substantial capital injection. The family won't want to sell, I told Marcus over coffee one morning. They're too proud. Everyone has a price, he replied, especially people who are desperate. He was right. The settlement with the injured workers and federal fines totaled $47 million. My parents had to mortgage everything, their house, their vacation property, their retirement accounts. But it wasn't enough. The company needed $50 million minimum to survive, pay settlements, restructure operations, and rebuild credibility. My father couldn't raise it. No bank would touch them. That's when I made my move. I flew to Denver on a Friday afternoon, unannounced. I went straight to Harlow Industries headquarters, a building I'd visited countless times as a child. The receptionist didn't recognize me at first. I'm here to see Vincent Harlow, I said. I don't have an appointment, but tell him Nora's here. He'll see me. 10 minutes later, I was being escorted to his office. My father sat behind his desk, looking 10 years older than when I'd last seen him. Gray had overtaken his temples. Lines creased his face. His suit was rumpled. Nora. He stood, uncertain. This is unexpected. I have a proposition, I said, not bothering with pleasantries. I've reviewed your financial situation. You need $50 million to settle the lawsuit, pay fines, and restructure operations. You can't get it from traditional sources. His face hardened. If you're here to lecture me, I'm here to buy the company. Silence. My father stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. That's not funny. I'm not joking. $50 million, cash. Full acquisition. I keep the Harlow name, the employees who want to stay, and the core business. You and Mom walk away with enough to pay your debts and retire comfortably. You don't have that kind of money. I pulled out my phone and showed him my bank statement. His eyes widened. Where did this come from? Consulting. Investments. Building something while you told me I was wasting my time. I put my phone away. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires and you can watch the company dissolve in bankruptcy court. My father called the family together that night. I sat in their living room, a room I'd grown up in, now feeling like foreign territory. My mother cried quietly in her chair. Diane glared at me with pure hatred. This is cruel, Diane said. You're taking advantage of them when they're vulnerable. I'm offering a solution, I corrected. Dad can reject it. Then what? Bankruptcy? Losing everything anyway. At least this way, the company survives and they get something. You're enjoying this, my mother accused. Her voice cracked. Watching us beg. No one's begging, I said calmly. This is business. Pure business. You taught me that family and business should be separate, remember? Every time you excluded me from the company because I wasn't serious enough. My father hadn't spoken since we sat down. He stared at the floor, hands clasped between his knees. Finally, he looked up. If we agree, what happens to us? You'd be free from the debt, free from the legal liability. You could retire, travel, do whatever you want. And the company becomes mine, completely. New leadership, new strategy, new direction. He nodded slowly, processing. My mother made a sound between a sob and a laugh. I can't believe this is happening. We sat in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then my father extended his hand. You have a deal. I shook it, feeling nothing. No triumph, no joy, no vindication. Just the cold satisfaction of a transaction completed. The paperwork took 3 weeks. My lawyers were thorough, ensuring every detail was ironclad. Marcus helped structure the deal through a holding company I'd established. By the time the ink dried, I owned Harlow Industries completely. My parents received enough to pay their debts with about $2 million left over. Comfortable, but nothing like their previous wealth. The day the deal closed, I walked into the building as the owner. Employees whispered as I passed. Some smiled nervously. Others looked terrified about their futures. I called an all-staff meeting in the main warehouse. I know there's been uncertainty, I told the assembled workers. I'm Nora Harlow, and as of today, I own this company. Some of you remember me as the founder's daughter. I want to be clear. This isn't a family business anymore. It's my business. We're going to rebuild, restructure, and recover. But it will take hard work from everyone. I paused, looking at the faces staring back at me. If you're willing to work hard, you have a future here. If not, I'll provide generous severance packages. But make no mistake, things are changing. Over the next 2 weeks, I met with every department head. I fired the dead weight, the yes men my father had surrounded himself with, the managers who'd been coasting on loyalty rather than performance. I brought in new blood, hungry, talented people who saw opportunity in rebuilding a damaged brand. 3 months after the acquisition, my parents showed up at my office without warning. My assistant buzzed me. Mr. and Mrs. Harlow are here. They don't have an appointment. I considered turning them away, but curiosity won. Send them in. They looked smaller somehow. My father's expensive suits were gone, replaced by a department store blazer. My mother's designer handbags had been traded for something from a mall outlet. Nora, my father began, his voice rough. We need to talk. I gestured to the chairs. Sit. They sat, and I saw my father glance around the office. My office, I'd redecorated completely, removing every trace of his tenure. Modern furniture, abstract art, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Denver's skyline. The severance you gave us, my mother started, then stopped. It's gone, I guessed. They nodded in unison. Medical bills, my father explained. Your mother's been having heart problems, and the retirement account we thought we'd salvaged got caught up in another lawsuit. Some shareholders are claiming we hid assets before the sale. Did you? I asked bluntly. No. My father's flash of anger was quick and weak. We were honest about everything. But defending ourselves is expensive. So why are you here? My mother's voice was barely a whisper. We need jobs. I let the request hang in the air between us. My parents needed jobs. From me. From the daughter they dismissed, belittled, and excluded from my entire adult life. The symmetry was perfect. What kind of positions were you thinking? I asked, my tone neutral. My father straightened slightly, a ghost of his old pride appearing. Well, I ran this company for 30 years. My experience could be valuable in a consulting capacity. Advisory role, perhaps. And you? I looked at my mother. I managed the community relations and charitable giving. I could handle corporate social responsibility initiatives. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider it. Those are interesting ideas. Unfortunately, I've already filled my advisory board with people who understand current market conditions. And our CSR budget is currently focused on compensating the workers your defective parts injured, not community galas. My mother flinched. My father's hands clenched. Then what would you have us do? He asked. I opened my laptop and pulled up 2 job postings. We have an opening in quality control. It's inspection work, checking parts before they ship. $42,000 a year. And there's a position in customer service, handling client complaints and concerns. $38,000 a year. The numbers landed like punches. My father had made $750,000 a year as CEO. My mother's allowance alone had been $100,000 annually. You're joking. Diane's voice came from the doorway. I looked up to see my sister standing there, face red with fury. You can't be serious. I didn't invite you to this meeting, I said calmly. Those are insulting offers, Diane continued. They ran this company for decades. They deserve respect. They deserve what every other employee deserves. Fair pay for the work they do. These are the positions available. They can take them or leave them. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, he looked like his old self. Authoritative, commanding, ready to put me in my place. I will not be humiliated like this. Not by my own daughter. Then don't, I replied, not standing. No one's forcing you to work here. But these are the only positions I have available at your skill level. Our skill level, my mother's voice rose. We built this company from nothing. No, Grandpa Frank built it from nothing. You inherited it and ran it into the ground. There's a difference. Diane moved to stand beside our parents, a united front against me. You've changed, Nora. You've become cold, mean. This isn't who you are. I finally stood, meeting her gaze. No, Diane. This is exactly who I am. I'm the person who was never good enough for this family, who was told her dreams were foolish, who was excluded from every important decision. I'm that person, but now I'm successful. And you can't stand it. We loved you, my mother said, tears flowing now. We always loved you. You loved the idea of me falling in line. You loved having someone to look down on. You never loved who I actually was. The silence that followed was broken only by my mother's crying. Finally, my father spoke. We'll take the jobs. I pulled out 2 employment contracts I'd had my assistant prepare that morning. I'd known this moment was coming. Sign these. Standard employment terms. 90-day probation period. No special treatment. You report to your department managers, not to me. My father's hand shook as he signed. My mother could barely hold the pen. Watching my parents work at the company they once owned became a daily reminder of how far we'd all fallen and risen. My father arrived every morning at 7 sharp, wearing the company uniform, a blue-collared shirt with the Harlow Industries logo, and checked parts against specifications. My mother sat in a cubicle handling angry phone calls from clients still upset about the safety issues. Employees whispered. Some felt bad for my parents. Others, particularly those who'd been laid off during the crisis, felt they were getting what they deserved. I kept my distance, treating them exactly like any other employee. No special meetings, no family dinners, no acknowledgement of our relationship beyond the professional. Diane tried to rally support against me. She called Kenneth, who'd successfully landed at a competitor. They planned an intervention, showing up at my office together one Thursday afternoon. This has gone too far, Kenneth said, standing in front of my desk like he had any authority. You're embarrassing the family. I'm running a business, I corrected. If you don't like it, don't visit. There are parents, Nora. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It meant something when I needed their support, and they gave me nothing. Now they need mine, and I'm providing employment. That's more than they ever gave me. The company's transformation was remarkable. Within 6 months, we'd secured new contracts, rebuilt supplier relationships, and implemented safety protocols that became industry leading. Revenues started climbing. Our reputation began to recover. Industry publications that had written us off as finished now featured us as a comeback story. Forbes interviewed me about turning around a distressed asset. I didn't mention it was my family's company. During the interview, they asked about my management philosophy. I believe in meritocracy, I said. Results matter. Legacy doesn't. The name on the building means nothing if the work isn't excellent. The article came out with a photo of me in the renovated headquarters. My father saw it. I know because he left a copy on my desk one morning with a sticky note. We're proud of what you've accomplished. I threw it away without responding. Proud now. Not when I was 25 and terrified, starting my career. Not when I was 30 and building my fortune. Only now, when my success had made theirs irrelevant. Their pride meant nothing to me anymore. I'd learned to survive without it. My mother's breaking point came during a company-wide meeting. I was presenting quarterly results, excellent numbers that showed Harlow Industries was not only surviving, but thriving. As I detailed our growth trajectory, I noticed my mother in the back of the room. She was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. After the meeting, she waited until everyone else had filed out. Can we talk? She asked. Make an appointment with my assistant. Nora, please. 5 minutes. As your mother, not your employee. Against my better judgment, I nodded. She closed the door and stood there, wringing her hands. I'm sorry, she finally said. For everything. For how we treated you. For not seeing how talented you were. For making you feel like you didn't belong. I waited. There had to be more. But this, she gestured around, this punishment has to end. You've proved your point. You're successful. You've won. Can't we just be a family again? We were never a family, I said quietly. Not the way you mean. We were people who shared DNA and a last name. Real families support each other. Real families don't make their children beg for basic respect. I'm begging now, she said. I'm begging you to forgive us. Forgiveness isn't the issue. This isn't about revenge. It's about consequences. You made choices. I made choices. Now we're all living with them. My father's collapse was more dramatic. It happened in the quality control room 3 months after they'd started working for me. He'd been inspecting parts when he suddenly swept his entire workstation clean, parts clattering to the floor. I can't do this, he shouted. The room went silent. Everyone stared. I built this company. I gave my whole life to it. And now I'm checking parts like some entry-level worker? It's humiliating. I was in a meeting upstairs when security called. By the time I arrived, my father was sitting on the floor, head in his hands, surrounded by scattered equipment. I dismissed everyone else and closed the door. Get up, Dad. He looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Defeat. Complete and total defeat. I can't do this anymore, Nora. I just can't. Then quit. No one's forcing you to stay. And go where? Do what? I'm 63 years old. No one else will hire me. Not after everything that happened. I crouched down to his level. Then I guess you'd better figure out how to keep doing this job. Because this is what you have now. Just like I had to figure out how to build a career when you told me I'd never succeed. I was wrong, he whispered. I know. I stood up. Clean up this mess. If you can't handle the work, we'll discuss other options. I left him there on the floor, surrounded by the pieces of his broken pride. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father, who'd once commanded respect in boardrooms, now took orders from managers young enough to be his children. My mother, who'd spent decades planning charity galas, now fielded complaints about defective parts. They shuffled through their days, ghosts haunting the halls of their former empire. Sometimes I'd see them in the cafeteria, eating alone while other employees gave them a wide berth. They'd aged rapidly, both of them looking older than their years. The stress had carved deep lines into their faces. I felt nothing watching them. No satisfaction, no guilt, no sadness. They were simply employees now. 2 people who worked for me. No different from the hundreds of others on payroll. Diane stopped speaking to me entirely. Kenneth sent one final email saying I was dead to him. Fine. I'd been dead to them long before this. Now at least we were honest about it. Marcus flew in from Seattle to check on the turnaround progress. We toured the facility together, and he noticed my parents working at their stations. That's cold, he said, but he was smiling. Necessary, I replied. They had their chance to run this place. They failed. Now they're learning what it means to be expendable. You've become quite ruthless. I learned from the best. I gestured toward my father's workstation. He taught me that business has no room for sentiment. I'm just applying the lesson. A year after the acquisition, Harlow Industries' recovery was complete. We'd exceeded pre-crisis revenue levels, expanded into new markets, and rebuilt our reputation as an industry leader. The board was thrilled. Investors were happy. Employees had received bonuses for the first time in years. My parents were still there, still working their modest positions. They tried reaching out to old business contacts for help, but those calls went unreturned. Their former peers had moved on, and the stink of failure clung to them like cheap cologne. One afternoon, my father requested a meeting. Formal, through proper channels, scheduled with my assistant. When he entered my office, he stood rather than sitting. I'm giving notice, he said. 2 weeks, standard. May I ask why? Because every day I walk through those doors, I'm reminded of everything I lost. Everything I threw away because I was too proud to listen, too stubborn to change, and too blind to see that my daughter was exactly what this company needed. He paused. I destroyed everything because I couldn't admit I was wrong. About the business. About you. About everything. I nodded. I accept your resignation. HR will process your final paycheck. He turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, you were right. About all of it. You're a better leader than I ever was. This company's better off in your hands. I know, I said. Not cruel, just honest. After he left, I sat at my desk and felt something unexpected. Not triumph or victory, but a strange emptiness. I'd spent years working toward this moment. Now that it was here, I realized revenge had never been the point. The point was proving to myself that I was enough, that I didn't need their approval or validation, that I could build something meaningful on my own terms. My mother lasted another 3 months before following my father out the door. She didn't make a dramatic exit. She simply submitted her resignation quietly and disappeared from my life. They moved to a small condo in Phoenix, far from Denver and the wreckage of their former lives. I heard through Diane that they were struggling financially, but surviving. My father took a part-time job at a hardware store. My mother volunteered at a library. They'd been humbled completely. The power shift was total. I was the one with the empire now. They were the ones trying to figure out how to make rent. Sometimes late at night, I'd wonder if I'd gone too far. If I'd become the same kind of cruel parent they'd been to me. But then I'd remember that night 7 years ago, crying in my childhood bedroom, feeling worthless and small. I'd remember every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every time they'd made me feel like I didn't belong. No, I hadn't gone too far. I'd gone exactly as far as necessary. They'd taught me that family loyalty was conditional on success. I'd simply learned the lesson better than they'd taught it. The final blow came when they lost their condo. Medical bills from my mother's heart condition had drained their savings. My father's part-time income wasn't enough. They faced eviction. Diane called me, furious and desperate. You have to help them. You're rich. You own the company they built. You owe them something. I owe them nothing, I said calmly. They're getting exactly what they gave me. Indifference. They're your parents, and I'm their daughter. The one they told wasn't good enough. The one they excluded and belittled. Where was this family loyalty then? Diane hung up on me. 3 days later, I received a letter from my parents. Handwritten, 6 pages long, detailing their situation and asking for help. Not a loan, a gift. $50,000 to cover their debts and get back on their feet. I read it once. Then I filed it away without responding. If they wanted money, they could do what I'd done. Work for it. Build it. Earn it without expecting handouts from people who owed them nothing. The universe had a funny way of coming full circle. They'd refused to invest in me when I needed it. Now I was refusing to bail them out when they needed it. Perfect symmetry. 2 years after buying Harlow Industries, I sold it for $120 million. A major conglomerate wanted to acquire our technology and client base. I negotiated hard and walked away with more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. The employees got generous retention bonuses. The company's legacy was secure. I was free. I moved to New York, started a private equity firm, and focused on investing in female-founded businesses. Companies run by women who'd been told they weren't good enough. Entrepreneurs who'd been dismissed by their families. I became the investor I'd wished existed when I was starting out. My parents heard about the sale through the news. They tried calling. I didn't answer. They sent emails. I didn't respond. They were ghosts to me now, haunting a past I'd completely moved beyond. Sometimes I'd see their faces in my mind, sitting in those chairs in my office, begging for jobs. The memory didn't make me happy or sad. It just was a moment in time when everything had finally, completely balanced out. I'd proven everything I needed to prove. To them, to myself, to the world. I was successful not because of my family, but in spite of them. And that made the victory so much sweeter. I lean back in my New York penthouse, city lights stretching to the horizon, and think about the journey that brought me here. From black sheep to empire builder. From dismissed daughter to self-made multimillionaire. The path wasn't about revenge, though it tasted sweet when it came. It was about proving that their opinion of me never mattered. That I was always enough, with or without their approval. My phone buzzes with a message from Marcus. Congratulations on the new fund. $200 million raised. You're unstoppable. I smile. Unstoppable. That's exactly what I am. What I always was, even when they couldn't see it. My parents taught me valuable lessons, just not the ones they intended. They taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when it matters. They taught me that approval from others is worthless compared to approval from yourself. They taught me that the best revenge isn't hurting the people who hurt you. It's succeeding so completely that their opinions become irrelevant. I didn't need to watch them beg for jobs to win. I'd already won the moment I stopped needing them to validate my worth. Everything after that was just the universe confirming what I'd already known. I was always going to be extraordinary. They just never bothered to look closely enough to see it. Their loss, my gain. And that's the sweetest victory of all. My name is Nora, and this is my story.